Insanity, and welcome to this episode of our podcast. Today we have the one and only Lee Lakosky. This is going to be a two-part episode, and if you know anything about Lee, you know he loves whitetails and he loves hunting big game. That man's going to forget more in a day than I'll learn in a lifetime. So what do you say we get this thing started? I'm not going to give you a spiel of a commercial on this podcast because I hate it when other people do it, so let's keep it simple. For all your fall food plot needs, our friends over at Tecomate have given us a 10% discount code for you all to use. It is Tecomate10. That's Tecomate 10. Go look it up and get whatever fall food plot products you need. I promise you won't be disappointed. Graham, I'm sure you know who Lee is. Lee, this is Graham.
Hi, How's it going?
Graham should be in a good mood because they just came fresh off a series win over the Yanks.
Oh, yeah. That always puts you in a good mood. There were some ups and downs in the series, but I tell you what, it was fun to watch Chase Burns pitch on that stage.
That kid's straight Ks?
That kid's got some pretty fun stuff to watch.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. Jeff Lindsay texted me about that. He's like, how'd that kid pitch tonight?
Fast. He pitched fast.
Yeah.
Well, Lee, I got a question for you. You got anything new or exciting coming up? Or is it just watching your deer at this point?
Well, right now, a lot of the work is done, so we're just been spraying and stuff like that and just making sure everything is perfect. And, you're starting to recognize some deer from last year. So it's it's fun right now seeing, the growth of stuff. But really, we get into July and that's the fishing month. I like musky fishing too. So I got musky fishing to look forward to the next few weeks, but then we'll be right back to deer and elk and everything. So it's kind of nice right now that we did so much work getting everything ready and 3 different states and running all over making sure everything is done. And now I'm just kind of at the point, okay, I can breathe a little bit when we get to 4th of July. Okay, now I'm going to fish for a couple weeks and get some of that in and just watch the cameras and hopefully the deer are growing.
Yeah. So how much do they grow typically from now, which would be the end of June, till we'll say when they start hardening there towards the end of August?
Oh, it just depends because your ones that drop early, we have some that, look like they're almost fully formed now. I mean, they'll put on some more length, but then you have some that are just branching at the tube. So I guess it'll really depend on, basically when if they shed early, then they'll start growing early. So my biggest one right now, his fours up pretty good, but from last year, he should put up pretty big fours. So they got a lot of growing to do, but they're still, they're maybe 3 inches on the fours. Then you have other ones that are just splitting, you got brows and they're just splitting at the beam and the two. So, you got your eye on some now, but I'm sure there's some of them that, you're just looking at, there just doesn't look like much yet. That will catch your eye here in another couple of weeks.
Yeah, they sneak up on you.
Yeah.
I got, Tacticam sent us a couple of the new cameras with the live view. That kind of scares me.
The Ultra.
I don't know if I need live view in my life.
I never get anything done.
Yeah, well, it helps a lot, because I've got a new farm that I got, and it butts up to one of my farms I've had for a long time. So a lot of the same deer over there, so that's actually the place where I put an Ultra out, and that's where my biggest deer so far is. And he was there on our other farm last year and stuff too, but I'm kind of hoping I could move him over here with a bunch of food, and we did. So far, so good, but I don't really know how they enter the field and stuff there because it's brand new. I just got it. I mean, we just were able to buy it last year. And so it kind of helps that live view when I see him, he's there basically every morning, just kind of watch and see which way he goes off, which way he comes in and stuff. It'll give you a little bit of, especially on a new farm like that, it can give you some insight as to how they're using them fields rather than just, okay, they're in the field.
Yeah.
So it helped on that. That was kind of when they sent us, that's a perfect spot because I'd like to, pop on that live view sometime and see where they're coming in from because I wasn't 100% sure, but I got a pretty good idea now.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to figure out a new 100 acres we added too, so we're in the same boat. you're like, well, I know they're there, but how are they getting there?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, we got like such a small sample size of it last year, because even still, when we would go out to hunt, we would venture out that way, but it would be like one guy would go out there out of 4 days, and it would be like a 1-day hunt that somebody would be out there out of the 4 days. And so it's just, we never really got to spend enough time, because we also had other bucks we were hunting after that we knew where their home base kind of was. So
Right.
Yeah. Now, I believe old Jay Bird, he had a real particular question for you. He wanted to go back to the golden days.
Yeah. Yeah. Back, when I was a kid, we were watching Monster Bucks too. And it was like right now you'd consider it. It's probably like the dream team of deer hunters on there. It was you, Jay Gregory, Kiskies, your wife. It was her last name was like you were just dating.
Profont, yeah.
Profont, yeah. I remember being a kid watching that. Like, who else was on there? The Druries were on there too with you guys. Like it was it's old school, but like just you guys were, that's when big, like you guys were killing big deer before everybody was, you know what I mean? Like now people kill a lot of big deer.
The whitetail craze kind of hit was back in the early 2000s, really.
Yeah, I just remember watching like Monster Bucks too. It was on VHS. I bet my dad still got it. I don't know. I don't have a VHS player, but
I know
some
we
of the
have
tactics.
VHS, tapes somewhere too. You have to sometimes break them out, because it was like, those Monster Buck days and the Drury stuff and HS stuff and everything. It was like when that came out, like at Walmart, it was like Christmas Day, oh man, you hear the new Monster Bucks are out, and you go and get that stuff and, go look at all those. And, now it's different. Kids today would never have that, because there's just so much on YouTube and you can see, constant deer stuff. But back then, it wasn't even that long ago. You figure it wasn't even cell phones that long ago. Wasn't that long ago as you going and developing pictures, on 35 millimeter cameras. You're running in doing like, you just wanted to see what was on. Then you pay out money for 1 hour developing, and you had nothing on there. Dang it, and you go back. I mean, that wasn't even now that long ago. So kids today don't realize how easy they have and how much access they have to information and stuff. But it just wasn't back then.
The learning curve's a lot shorter now.
Hold on, Grant. Why are you shaking your head? You're a kid these days.
Because I am probably like the last generation that grew up on actually watching the outdoor television, not going onto YouTube and watching hunts via like that way. My dad had all the VHS tapes, the CDs, like all that stuff. So I grew up watching Lee from whenever I first started watching outdoor television. So I've been watching Lee hunt and his wife hunt for years.
Yeah, he used to write articles too, and you were a guide at Buffalo County. I read all that. You have to go get a magazine. Like you get North American Whitetail and actually read it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's how I started, was writing, just in college. I used to write for North American Whitetail, deer hunting and stuff like that. And it just kind of grew from there. And back then you didn't do it for money. You didn't think it would ever be a job or anything like that, just because you loved it, just to be part of it.
It's kind of like us doing this podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah, but at least back then you didn't have social media haters roasting you around every corner. My goodness gracious.
I'd never, it's funny because I never look at social media. I mean, like we have our social media stuff, but like I send pictures to and information, things that we want to post to Sean, who she posted for. So if somebody told me to post something on Instagram or anything, I would have no clue how you do any of that stuff. And so I never look at it. So people can tell me about stuff, is that it's not really in my wheelhouse. I never look at social media, and I certainly wouldn't read comments or anything if I did. So, I'm pretty oblivious to it.
Clayton had to make me an Instagram too, so I get it.
Yeah. He didn't have one, so Graham and I got on and we made him an Instagram.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't really get it. To be honest, maybe I'm just different than most people. How much time people, spend. I see on their phones all the time, and I'm just not that interested in what everybody's doing. As like my buddies and stuff, we text back and forth, what are you seeing or whatever, but just like random things, I just feel like I don't have time for that. People like they spend so much time on that. It's like, God, I got so many things to do. And then you got 2 young kids too. It's like, I'd feel sick if I spent 4 or 5 days sitting looking at scrolling through YouTube or something like that when I could have been hanging with my kids or doing something for hunting or, improving my property or something. So I just can't do it. And I guess I'm glad. It's like, I'm just not all that interested in random people I don't know. It's like all my buddies and stuff, we are always just texting back and forth during hunting season and stuff. So, but I guess maybe I'm just too old for that, I guess.
Well, I was the same way, and then I was an idiot and decided to rope these two into starting a podcast. So,
yeah, well, we do YouTube stuff too. I mean, I love doing this stuff. I just don't, watch it that much. I'll look at YouTube if I need something, like if I need to figure something out, or if you're, putting in new shocks or a new axle on a Ranger or something like that. You can look at it. It's great to have all that information. And I think like if I were just starting hunting, like back when we just had to learn everything on our own, I would be on it all the time, watching that stuff, if I hadn't been doing it for 30 years. So it's definitely good to have for the guys kids that are just starting out now. There's so much information. You could skip 20 years of learning stuff just by watching now.
Yeah. I just tell everybody it's still the best way. Like, you can watch a video, you can read a book, but you got to go mess up. You're going to mess up.
For sure.
And that's when you'll remember that, because it stings a little more, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can learn how to do, like, to get, stand placement and food plots and all that stuff, but there's just nothing like experience when it comes to actually, killing stuff. Because, and I always tell everybody, hunt everything you possibly can. I hear people sometimes say, I don't really want to hunt antelope or something. You're just like, no, tell me, trust me, you want to. You learn something every time you hunt something that makes you better at whitetail hunting, mule deer hunting, spot and stock stuff. I mean, everything you do just makes you a better hunter. And it's funny, everybody does. Everybody thinks they're a great hunter because they don't know. I mean, you only know what you know, but it's funny. Like I had, guys that I hunted with in high school and stuff that that they were great hunters and stuff. And now 20 years later, you go hunt with them and you're like, holy cow, you guys are rookies, and like Tiffany always thinks she's a rookie. She's like, oh, heck, I just do what you say or whatever. And it's like, now you start hunting with her, for so many years, like, she is phenomenal. I mean, as far as quiet and makes good shots and makes good decisions and stuff. But there's just nothing like experience. They got like Tiffany, she's been hunting for 20 years together, 200 days a year, and that's how you get to be good at it. You can't read it or watch it. You have to go out and do it. But you'll see people make mistakes all the time. I mean, it's so funny. Like I said, everybody thinks they're a great hunter because, you only know what you know. But when I have so many people come here, and you just get a buck in front of them, and you see how many of them miss and hit them in the ass and the ear and the neck and stuff, and you're just like, it's a little different when you put a deer or an animal out in front of you. There's nothing you can do about it other than just get experience, hunting.
Yeah, some people just like, my buddy's bad. Clayton, sometimes you black out a little bit. Like, I swear my one buddy blacks out. Like, I'm like, where was it standing? He's like, I don't know. Like, you don't know? Like, which way did it go? He's like, it went that way.
If you don't get it, I mean, that's great. I like seeing it, though, like when friends come and they get, they maybe make mistakes like that, because you just know they're so excited about it. And that's the important thing. But it's like everyone, I mean, I used to be that way, and you just learn through experience, and you still get that way. You still get hyperventilate when you see them coming. You teach yourself, okay, calm down, and I'm just going to watch for a minute until I get my breathing under control, and then I'm going to concentrate on making a good shot and stuff. And after so many years of doing it and stuff, you kind of can learn that, but it's not something that just comes natural, into me.
And I tell you, like, I've had the biggest run-in with a deer that I had was this past season, and this is my 4th year playing at the big league level, and I was shaking a tree about the size of a bowling ball or bigger.
Yeah. So we call Blake Shelton Shake Shelton. Didn't get that dancing skill.
Oh yeah. Oh, I don't have a rhythmic bone in my body. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, Blake was. You could put a deer in front of him and he just You can see you just shaking like crazy. So we call him Shake Shelton. But yeah, it's good to see though, because, you know, people are stoked about it. You know, if they didn't get excited and shaking and everything, it's like, okay, well, they probably don't love it like we do.
All right. Well, Lee, I got a question for you. Can you tell us a little bit about the 460-inch bull in Montana and how you use the whitetail mentality to let it grow and get it the next year?
Yeah, well, it kind of is everything. You know, once you start, you know, your whole life has been around managing deer and trying to get them older and trying to, now it's like, it's not even so much shooting them. It's like, man, what could it be next year? What could it be next year? It's almost like trying to grow them and trying to see how how old and big you can get them. And with EHD now, it's just so dang hard. But you just kind of get that management, mentality just in your soul. And it's like, doesn't matter where I go, it's, it's always that. It's always, wow, how old do you think that one is? I wonder what it would be next year. It's like, you're never going to go back there next year. You'll probably never be back in your life at a lot of these places. But I'm always concerned about it. So on that bull, it was one that when we first bought a place in Montana, that bull was on there, but we weren't hunting that year. So at the time we bought it was already after the season, but the rancher there had pictures of it. And it was like probably the biggest bull that was around in that area, like on our place and his. And it was probably like, it was a 4 something anyway. And then the next year was the first year that we hunted there. He really went downhill. I mean, he was like a 6x5 and he was real, kind of short beamed on the one side. And like now after we shot him this year, there was, I didn't see it, but like one of my guys said somebody had, on Instagram or something like that, just, put in the comments that they had seen that bull and he was limping real bad after 21. And so likely maybe somebody hit him in the shoulder or something, because, where our ranch is, there's lots of BLM land around it. I mean, some stuff that borders us. So there's other people that can hunt, and you know how far elk move. I mean, I don't even know where they winter. I mean, they could get killed in gun season 5 miles away and you'd never know it, So you're always taking a risk on everything, but elk even more so because they don't stay home. Like, at least your whitetails, you can keep most of them, at least most of the year, they'll live in a small area. But elk, I mean, who knows where they are. And so, we left him that year, even though he was still big. I mean, he was mature.
So could you have shot him that year?
Could I have?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure I could. I'm sure I could have killed him any year.
Yeah.
But I just never hunted him. We saw him, and it's like pretty much, it's kind of gotten to be, I figure like just like deer, if you put them on deer here that are like on our hit list, it's pretty much a death sentence for them, because you just learn how to hunt them in places. You know how you're going to kill them and where, and you got food plots of set up. And it's even, you kind of feel that way. And maybe it's arrogant of you, but I always feel like, hey, if I've got one and I'm seeing him and he's here, I'm going to kill the thing, And so that year we just left him. And then the next year, he came back. He was a 6x6, but he still wasn't as big as he was, in 21. And so there was him and this other bull we called Ladies Man, because he had all the cows all the time. And we saw both of them like kind of squaring off and fighting like the 6x5, we call him, but we call him Big D this year. I mean, they were kind of square off and stuff, but he was kind of a little bit more of a loner. Like, he would go and get cows when he was ready, but the other times he would just say, forget it, I'm just going to go lay down. So I spotted him by himself a couple times. Okay, I glassed him up and said, man, he's a perfect spot. You can go kill that bull. But I was like, no, I'm just going to leave him again, because he's still, I don't think as big as he was in 21. And then just shot the other one, the straight 6x6. And then like this year, I'm just so glad that we left him, because you see it all the time in deer too. Yeah, you get some that are just, it's a nice buck, it's a pretty decent one. You just leave them, and they might be one that's old enough that like 5 or 6 or 7 years old, even that they're old enough. It's like, but they just make it through by default. You shoot other ones, or you have maybe guys that you put them on them and they don't kill them or something. And all of a sudden they get to 7 or 8, and you're like, boy, and they could put on, 60 inches. You're like, holy crap! I'm glad I didn't shoot that thing. And I got so many examples of that on deer, but that's what happened on this bull. He's probably we don't know, because when we bought the place, he was already old. We figured he must have been like a 9 or 10 in 21, so he's probably like a 12-year-old bull. And then this year he just blew up, and that side that was always weak, he had damaged it in velvet, so it had like a big knot in there, and then a couple of stickers came out of that knot, and actually, put him. There's no telling what he would have been if he hadn't have done that, because if you straighten that out. So now it's like a non-typical. I mean, it's obviously it's 4, but it comes out like off the side of the beam a little bit instead of on the top, because he damaged it in velvet. Like, must have nicked the velvet or something. And so, like, if officially scored, which I don't really care about that much, but if officially scored, they would say that that's a non-typical point. So you'd be losing this whole 25 or 26 inch beam, but he still it would be like probably the Montana State record, close to it anyway, the record not even on it. But for me, I just look at the gross score. He's almost, the gross score is 459. So I'm almost 460 inches. I mean, it's
that's crazy. There's that much horn. I mean, good
yeah.
Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
nets are for fishing. That's my motto.
Yeah, I mean the total amount of horn's a total amount of horn, in my opinion. I mean it's the total amount of inches one way or another. That's my thing with that.
Ding that, and you put like a couple sticker points, into, his beam length or anything else that, that comes up that would have been typical. I mean, I'm sure it would have just smashed the typical record.
I don't know much about elk when it comes to like the aging and the year process. Like what's kind of like, what would you say is kind of like that certain point of their life to where it's like they could potentially hit that blow up, or you kind of know like, all right, well, if you're somebody that has a bunch of land that can sit there and you see the same herd over the years, you can kind of know like, okay, well, I've seen this bull for a couple years. I know he's probably X amount. Like I should probably start trying to harvest him.
Yeah. And like I said, like for whitetails, I know inside and out, and elk I'm learning, and that's what's making it so fun for me of getting stuff out in Montana. We just bought a couple more places this year. Me and a couple of buddies of mine bought some more places out there just to have in that same zone, so I have a couple more options. But I'm not, you want to get a bull to like 8 to 10 mature, but hey, if you can get them to 12s, and they're always going to be bigger. It's even like whitetails. Like people think like 5-year-old is mature, which it is, but it's still, to me, like a 5-year-old's like a 20-year-old kid. He's not a 50-year-old. He's not a 50-year-old kid. And it's like you'd like to get him to 7 or 8. And you see how much they grow from that 5 to 7 and 5 to 8 years old can be huge amount, 100 inches. And so many bucks that people think, okay, they're 5 years old, they're mature, and it might be a 190 or something. And those are, most people aren't at that point where you can let a deer like that go. And even most years, I'm not either. But like last year, I just decided, I was just like, I had shot already a huge bull, and I shot caribou that, we had to cut the skull plate because we couldn't get it on a plane. I couldn't take it home because you couldn't get it through the door on the thing. So we had to cut the skull plate, but we just scored it before and after. It would probably be the world record archery mountain caribou. I mean, it would be, no question, but we had to cut the skull plate because I couldn't get it home otherwise. And, so I had such a great year already. And it's like, you know what? I'm leaving these 5-year-old deer. Most of them are 5. And I had like a 6, but that are big, like, 180s to 90s. I'm leaving every one of those. And I'm just going to see if I can get all those through another year. And of course, we had EHD last year. And I did lose one of them. I don't know. One of them we did find dead, but it was like they're dying like in November and December. But 3 of them got through. So we'll see what they do, because I've just seen it so many times with deer that if you let them go to that 7 or 8, how big of a jump they can make. Because it seems like most deer will do one huge jump in their life. Like it could be 30, it could be 100 inches. Like the one that skipped Sly shot this year, the thing grew like 100 inches almost. He's got deer that have blown like 100 inches. Not that one I shot this year, but a different one. And so they can really blow that 1 year. And we've been talking about it. I've been, thinking about it and stuff for a long time, talking with people, like some friends of mine have like a big place in Texas that they really monitor stuff a ton. And they do that big jump like one time, and that's when you got to shoot them. So like if you have like a big 4-year-old that's maybe 170 inches, wow, and then he blows like 220 or something at 5, you should probably shoot him, because that's the one big jump that they made a huge jump there. And a lot of times sometimes they'll make that big jump early, like at 4, and I'm just going to let them to 5, and they never get there again. That was going to be their biggest year. And I've seen it tons of times. Like they're still big, but they're never as big as they were that year that they did that big jump. And you let them go, and then they die from something. And you're just like, they never got there. But I've never seen one make that big jump twice. And, we have a couple this year between, I'm talking with like Ryan Siders. He used to own Yeti. He shoots multiple 200s every year on places. And we've been talking about that they make that one big jump, and he's got like a 2-year-old, and I have a real young one too that made this huge jump. Like they're huge at like 2. And it was like just kind of interesting to watch that deer and see if he just kind of, my assumption is like that was their big jump, and they'll be a good deer, going forward. But a lot of times when you get a real big young one like that, you think, oh, that's going to be a giant. A lot of times they don't. That was their big jump, and they just kind of peter out, and they're always, you keep letting them go, and they might be like 170 and deer, man, great deer, but they like those ones you think are going to be like, man, this could be a world class, like a 260 or something. And it's usually not. It's usually those deer that are really nice deer, might have some stickers and stuff. Man, that thing, 170, 180, also boom, they'll go like to 220 or 240s. And it's always in that one big jump year. So you kind of wait for that year that they do that big jump, and it's okay, that's the year you got to shoot them. And I'm not sure that elk are that way, because they just don't have, they're all just kind of like, most of them, if they want to be a 6x6 or 6x7, they don't have like the stickers. Like you get some that have some, like the one I shot had a couple stickers. You might have a little extra off here, but they're not like whitetails where they all of a sudden throw a bunch of junk everywhere, So I think on elk, as now, it's just like, okay, I'm trying to get them to, something that's like a 10-year-old or something you feel it's like that, and, just as big as you can get them, and just look at genetics more. Most people look at elk, they just look at the back end, but most of the scores in the front end, you got 3 points down at the bottom, the brows and the thirds that make up, that's, you got 6 points there rather than the 2 on top, basically. So you guys will look at the ones that have the great genetics with giant bottoms, and then, just kind of let those ones go and try to find an old one. If you don't have a giant one, we just look for an old bull that's maybe doesn't have big thirds or something, and just try to take those out. It's we kind of just do it the same way as we do for deer. I've always kind of looked at things that way, even like the caribou thing. When it's like, you don't know that there's going to be a big one there. It's just like, okay, you do research and you find, okay, where do you think the biggest mountain caribou are? And so, okay, I'll go there. Okay, then when you go there, I spend a lot of days looking. And, you're not always going to find a giant. I just happened to find one on the last day, and then that's where it comes in. Like, our guide was like, no way, we'll never get to him. But he's used to just having rifle hunters. He couldn't even get with a rifle. I was like, we do this all the time. Just bang, 2 hours later, we had him dead. It was just, that's where doing all those days of hunting, spot and stalking with, like, antelope to me is like the best, because it's flat. They have great eyesight. A lot of them are skittish, and we just do spot and stalks on those things all the time, where you get down and you crawl and you go super slow and get as close to him as you can. And if you blow it, you don't really care. You're like, hey, it's an antelope. There's a million of them around. But it just really gets your spot and stalking skills. And you learn how careful you have to be, because those things, their eyesight is so good. And so they're not dumb. You see them at 200 yards and they're running. You're like, God dang, how am I going to get close to this thing? So you just keep working on it. And all those things help you so much. And just like our guide there was like, no way, we'll never get to it. He didn't want to go. So I said, well, I came here to hunt caribou, not to watch them. I said, you can stay here if you want. And we just kind of took off, and he was behind us for a while. And then we started getting closer and closer. And all of a sudden it's like, hey man, it looks like we might be able to do this, And then he was more excited about it. But if we hadn't just gone, I don't think he wasn't willing to go. He's like, it's too far. We'll never get to him, and you'll never do it with a bow. But
well, it's like we're talking about letting an elk go a couple years. Like they move so much. It's one of those deals, like a lot of things in life. When you do something like that, everyone calls you a lunatic until it works, and then you're a genius.
Yeah,
right.
Well, same thing. Like I shot one mountain lion. It's over here, and it's a giant. But it's like not something I'm going to do all the time. I'm going to find a spot that has the biggest ones, that has a good history of big ones anyway, and you're just going to wait for a real big one. And you have to be willing to, all right, I'm fine with going home without it. Try it again. And just got lucky, fine with it. It's a giant. Just I never had it officially scored, but they kind of waited the 60 days, scored it up there, and it would be like the biggest archery mountain lion ever killed, and on record anyway, in British Columbia, and like number 3 in the U.S. Same thing with like my brown bear. I had a lot of them, and a lot of them you just get lucky that because you don't know that you're going to find it. And even when you shoot a brown bear, when you get an old one, you don't know how big their skull is going to be. So you just kind of get lucky, because you can get giant old ones that their skulls aren't that big. But at the time, it was like number 4 ever with the bow at the time when I shot that one. But we passed a bunch of them. We had bears come in that were giants, and talking like, Cole Kramer is a friend of mine. He's like, I said, what do you think about that one? Like, man, and I had him coming in, and it was close. We could have shot him. He's like, God, he may be crazy, because like anyone with the bow, I'd say, and shoot that one, but it's not, a 10.5 foot bear. It might be a 9.5, which is still huge. Most people would shoot it. I said, no, I'm fine with that. And like at least on Kodiak, you can look at their claws. If you can see that they're white, that's an old boar. And if they're not, see dark, it's probably not old enough. So that one I could see it looked giant to me, but I could just see his claws, and they were black. And I was just like, he's like, no, it's like a 9.5 footer. I was like, no, that's not what I came for. And it's fine. I'd be fine just to go home without it. And we just got lucky and found a pig. And you happen to have a big skull and everything too. But anywhere that I go to hunt, it's kind of the same do the same kind of management stuff as we do for whitetails. And it's just been ingrained in me from doing it for so many years that you kind of treat every animal that way. I just want to find the oldest one, biggest one, but a lot of research too. I don't go on a whim on things. It's I do a lot of research on stuff before I do anything. Same thing. That's why we ended up where we are in Montana. It's like you got to know where you can grow a big one.
Yep. Yeah, like in the whitetail side, not to really touch on the social aspect of it. Everyone gets caught up on social media about the size of deer, this, that, and the other. We're proponents of kill whatever makes you happy, and we'll be happy for you. But it's one of those deals, like once you pass on one, like, hey, I think I want to he might be a 170-inch 4-year-old, and you pass on him, like, I want to see what he does. Like, and then you succeed a couple years later in harvesting that deer, and he got bigger. Like, once you get a taste of that, it's kind of hard to go back. At least for me,
for sure. And you don't start there. I mean, I grew up in northern Minnesota. I mean, there was no deer hardly. There's more wolves than deer. You shot a buck like this, man, he drove around with you in your car for 3 weeks. So I didn't start there. And it's like, died if I saw some of the deer I have now when I was a kid, and I never would have dreamed of it. But it's just after you shoot a bunch, okay, okay, now I want a bigger one. Now I want a better one. And people say whatever they want. You hear all the stuff that people say, but it's like, I don't, people say, well, I'll come to Pennsylvania and try to do that. And it's like, it's not so much about the size of the horns. For me, it's a challenge. I've shot a bunch of them like that. I want to get a bigger one. So it wouldn't matter if I lived in Pennsylvania. Maybe I wouldn't have a bunch of 200s like you do now, but I would still have a bunch of old deer, the oldest deer, biggest deer that are on the place. And that's what you want to hunt. So don't think that, for people who live in, Pennsylvania or something, they can get giant deer there too. You just try to get, the biggest deer in your area, or the oldest deer in your area, and cameras will tell you that. You learn all that stuff, and you try to get them through. And it's the challenge part. It's just like, you figure, Gretzky or something play hockey their whole life. Would it be fun for Gretzky when he in his prime to go and play in the Pee-wees again? It probably wouldn't be that fun anymore. I want a challenge. It's just like I like playing tennis, and he's like playing people that are better than you, because you feel like, okay, it doesn't you don't improve yourself by playing people that are not as good as you in tennis. You're not going to learn a bunch. So it's no different than in hunting. It's like, it's your personal journey through it. Like, I just want to find an older deer now. I want to find a bigger deer now because I've already done that. I found that. So it's like, I don't want to keep repeating the same things. And that's really why we start buying stuff in Montana. Okay, now I want to, we've gone as far as I can figure I can take it with whitetails. I'm going to try something else. And then let's try to do it with something else. It's always another challenge. And out in Montana, there's mule deer and whitetails and all that kind of stuff too. And you think that, there's not as big a deer in Montana, but there's 200s and there's giant deer in Montana. And I thought, hey, let's try to see how big of whitetails we can grow and stuff there. So it's another challenge in another state and stuff, so it's all personal how you feel about it.
I feel sorry for those poor whitetails on that place. I'm just gonna say.
Well, and one thing I feel like too that a lot of people don't really realize, and this might have been just because some of the people that I know, meeting guys that are in like the new YouTube guys that have kind of come around since like COVID. But like, there's a lot of these guys that are going around and hunting in these states that don't really get a lot of big recognition for deer hunting. And these guys are going in there and killing big deer. So it's like, there's big deer in places that a lot of people don't really go hunt in those states after. So it's like, there's plenty of deer out there for people to go and be able to find a good one to get after. It's just finding them, especially on public land.
Exactly. The thing is, you can grow giant deer anywhere. People, I moved to Iowa because was the best at the time, and it probably still is. And it's just because of the management and I'm sure they didn't try it that way because these laws were made a long time ago. They just got lucky that way. But you just look at what Missouri would be if it had the same DNR and that Iowa does. Iowa, it's only 8% timber. There's not that much cover, but you look at, like, you get to Missouri, okay, it's a little farther south, a little bit easier winters, way more tree cover, and it's beautiful. The fields and stuff, the mixture and stuff. It'd be unreal the number of deer that could hold. And kind of like Illinois and Kansas and all those states, if they just, had no rifles, gun season in December, only archery through the entire rut. This the number of bucks that would come. Just in any state. You could do it in Michigan. You could do it in Pennsylvania. You could do it anywhere would have just giant deer, because every one of those states has grown 200s, and there's no reason why you couldn't continue that. It's just, the management strategy. And like I said, I think Iowa just got lucky with that. I'm sure when all those dates and hunt dates and stuff were, put into place, they weren't doing it for knowing what would happen in 2025. They were just doing it for at the time. They just got lucky on that. And, but that's why I was so good. There's no guns in the rut, and they don't let a lot of people in. But there's not that much timber here, so you can't put a lot of people in. If you opened up Iowa we're going to open up like Missouri or Illinois, it would be so bad, so fast that we'd be moving someplace else quick, because it just doesn't have the cover. I mean, you can put a lot more people in Missouri, and that's why, Missouri and Illinois are still good, even though, like when Illinois opened up with the crossbows and that kind of stuff, how many more deer are getting killed, and, that you can shoot 2 bucks and all that stuff. And they still have great deer. But just think if like Illinois managed the way that Iowa did with that much timber, and same with Missouri, those places would be off the hook good. But you can make them anywhere. But, you can grow a big one wherever you want. I mean, lots of places, you just got to find them.
Yeah, it gets Jay about the difference between Kentucky and Ohio. Like, we got a spot, we all hunt in Kentucky mostly, but we got a spot we hunt in Ohio. Literally, you drive the bridge across that river, and it's totally different.
Uh-huh.
Because Kentucky's rifle season starts the second Saturday in November. So some years, like, you're talking, November 8th or 9th, and it's a 2-week rifle season.
It's 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks long.
And just look at the giants that are in Kentucky. Kentucky is like so one of my favorite places.
Right there in the rut too.
And it's just like punished. How big of bucks you can get there. I mean, Kentucky would be off the freaking hook too. I mean, so many places would, but you just got to try to find a place that doesn't get the pressure, and you find them. You just like you can grow a big one anywhere, and like for me, I just did it where, hey, I'm going to try to grow my own. Something like Lee Ellis, just going, hey, I'm going to go find one someplace. But as you get older, you get kids and stuff, you can't be on the road. So you got to just try to grow them where you're at and do everything you possibly can, because I can't be gone, 20 weeks during the hunting season and stuff, But
I got a question for you. So we talked about growing them. You talked about Missouri versus Iowa. I know, like, Kentucky versus Ohio, we do that same drive across the bridge, right across the river. The body size is totally different too. Like, those deer in Ohio, so,
for sure,
like, not that far into Ohio, they're much bigger. Like, do you notice that with Missouri and Iowa? Like, or is it unique to what I'm talking about? Because Kentucky may have, bigger hills. You know what I'm talking about? It's more like a mountain-bodied deer instead of a cropland deer.
Yeah, the thing with Kentucky, it was there weren't deer there. So when they brought the deer into Kentucky, they brought a strain from Wisconsin, and that's where sometimes you'll get that giant-bodied one there. But they brought them from Texas and from Alabama. That's how they populated the deer in Kentucky. So you'll see those strains all the time. You see like a Texas deer. It's got like big frame, small body, and spindly. And sometimes they'll look giant, and you get them on the ground, you're like, geez, thing's 130 pounds and spindly, and then you get some that are just tanks, that are giants, and that's your strains from Wisconsin. And so and then you get the little crappy things, and it's like, oh man, there must be one from Alabama or something. Yeah, little stuff.
Hey. Well, you're not a little fella from Alabama.
That's not everywhere. I'm saying on the bell curve, that's where you get them from. But because it was populated with different strains of deer to begin with, and so you still see those going through. Where if they weren't like brought in, just like Minnesota and all the northern states basically had deer, and those were all their natural deer, and they're bigger bodied, from colder weather and stuff like that. So when they brought them in, you see all those different strains. And we have our Illinois farmers in southern Illinois, and you even see it there. You'll see that, the giant bodies, and then you'll see the smaller bodies. Not to the degree you do in Kentucky, but in Kentucky, you can definitely tell those difference in deer. But you'll get them in Kentucky too with that Wisconsin strain that you have the giant bodies and big mass and stuff that are.
Hey, don't knock all the Alabama deer now. At the farm that I grew up hunting, it's sold 2 years later. We had a buck on there that we tracked for like 4 years. And the year after he bought it, he killed one. It was 179. It weighed 225 pounds.
for sure. I
in
understand
North Alabama.
anywhere, but
I never even heard of that. I've never heard. I mean,
I've been.
I knew it with the elk, but
I
bringing
remember
the deer in, but still.
Doc Rich was the old commissioner, and I remember when they were thinking about before they even had a deer season, there was 8 deer hit by cars in the state, and they're like, "Oh gosh, we got to start deer hunting." Because 8, like I've seen 8 dead deer going to the next exit up the interstate now. You know, I mean, there's just deer everywhere. Part of our problem is they want us to shoot more deer. That's why they do our gun season like that.
That's because no one shoots does. The weekend hunters out there just for a buck.
I shoot a lot of those.
It's like we've said forever now. It's like they should have gun season be for antlered bucks after the rut for 2 weekends, and that's it.
you know, for a lot of the time, like I've hunted down, I've been around Mississippi and stuff out Will Primo's place, but they have just a lot of those like just narrow like 7 points and 6 points and stuff like that. We have a lot of those on our Illinois farm too, but I think so much like our Illinois farm takes a lot of work, and I think like maybe in Alabama and stuff like that, where there's this like deer hunting was just like a religion down there, and so like every deer that has good genetics, and I'm pretty sure this is what happened like on our Illinois farm, because the people that had it before us, they had it like for quail hunting and more like bird hunting, and so like the deer, they just let anybody go in there and shoot. So every beautiful 10 point, they were dead at 3 years old and 2 years old. But any crappy ones, you know, they died of old age. So it's just like so many years of mismanagement, you know, letting all these 6 points and goofy things go. That's what was doing all the breeding. And I'm pretty sure that's probably the case in a lot of like Alabama, Mississippi, where there's so much hunting with such a tradition down there, you know, probably more so than a lot of the northern states, at least where I grew up. It was, you know, so every good genetic deer was pretty much taken out. You know, they never get the chance to get to 5 and 6. So that's, you know, we're in like year 6 in our Illinois farm, and you're really seeing the difference from the beginning, just trying to shoot all the 8s and 6s and 7 points and just leaving every 10 point. If we see a 10 point, man, it's going to make it to 5 to 8 years old. We are not shooting those things. I mean, those are like gold to us. We see something with good genetics. You know, I just soon let them all die of old age and just leave them, just forget it. Don't even hunt them. They're just let them die of old age, and we'll just keep shooting crappy, you know, genetic bucks until we get this place turned around. And I think that's what happens in a lot of states or places, at least where there's a lot of hunting pressure, that will happen everywhere. And a good point is you take Antelope Island, you know, out in Utah, where you know, there's just these giant mule deer out there, and they give like 2 tags a year. So I know like the guy that used to be the federal game warden there. He said that back in like 30 years ago, they were just like 270s, these huge mule deer on there. And he said, I remember on his horse, he had holding one that, you know, the rack was touching the ground from his horse. And then he said, like, when they're going to give a couple of tags, I knew it wouldn't ever be the same. I was like, really? This island is huge. I mean, how can you say that, you know, shooting 2 deer off it would make a difference? He goes, well, because to get them to like that 270, they have to be like 8 years old. And he said, so that first year, the biggest one might be 8 years old. And, you know, they'll shoot the 2 giant ones off there. But even by year 2, the biggest one, once you take like that 270 out, the biggest one might be a 220 or 230, but it might be a 5-year-old. And okay, they got the genetics. They're going to be that 270. They have that genetic, but they're going to be killed at 4 or 5 before they get there. And so every year they're just going to shoot the 2 highest scoring deer, but they won't care about age. And now it's exactly it. I mean, they never have one that big again. And you think 2 deer on an island that's huge. I mean, they're big, giant farm fields out there. The thing is, I don't know how many square miles the thing is, but it's enormous. You think just 2 deer off that can change that, where out of thousands of deer and 100 square miles almost on this island, taking 2 deer off it affects that. Yeah, because the biggest ones will be taken, the 2 big will be taken every year, hot scoring, and they'll never get to that 7 or 8 years old. And you think that, so now you think about a state like Michigan or something like that. I mean, every county is about the size of Antelope Island. So if every county, if you take only 2 bucks off of there, I mean, there's hundreds of taken, and they're always going to take the best genetic ones. And so it's just, you can never, that's why you see what whitetails can do. You see what like high fence deer can do. I mean, the goofy giant looking things. I mean, those, it's still a whitetail that could do that, but you just in the wild, they never will, mostly because of hunting pressure now. Like anything that would have that kind of genetic would be dead at 3 years old, likely, or 4 for sure. They'll never reach their full potential. So I think that's what happens in a lot of those states, and because I could see it happen on our farm in Illinois, and that there's giant deer on, they shoot 200s around there, and kind of like Kentucky, just giant non-typical stuff. But at the same time, it just had years and years of mismanagement.
Yeah, I mean, well, that giant deer makes one wrong step outside of Billy Bob's house on his way to work in the morning during rifle season. Forget about it, sucker. He gone.
Right.
Lee, I do have a question for you. I want to know, how close is that deer's horns over your left shoulder compared to a coat can? Because that's some of the thickest horns I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, that one's pretty decent, but I got some way heavier ones than that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's funny when we had like, moths, and I had the guys come in, they took them all down. They were down in my archery range, and I was like, oh my gosh, look at it. I mean, I don't know how, I never even counted them, but there's probably 100 deer mounts, but we got some really heavy ones, but that's a big one. I mean, that was one that's a perfect example of what we're talking about. That one was only 5 years old, but he was like a 170 the year before, and he blew to 222, and that was the year. It's like, no, that's, I mean, likely because you got that dagger point off the base there. He never had that before. He never have it again, and that's like 16 inches there. And so that was one that we decided, hey, I'm going to shoot him at 5. But then there's other ones that I've got that are left them until 8, and they had like at 3 years old, he was a 10, and had a kicker out the side. And then at 4, 5, 6, and 7, he was a 9-point. Big though. I mean, like 180 inch. I mean, it's like jeepers, I think he's a pig and just big mass and everything. Just like finally at like 7, we were going to shoot him, and I had him out one time, and I could have killed him. And I was like, just wait till later. And basically the reason was, kind of make a long story short, is like I had my buddy Tom here hunting. It was like the last day, and he hadn't killed one yet. And I said, well, we could go try for Wednesday, but he said he's just so irregular. It's not like one that you're going to go and see every night. That's, you get some bucks that are just regular all the time. And he was always, his whole life, just so random. Like you get pictures of him every week, but it was never in the same spot twice, and never in the same times. And I said, boy, he's just so irregular. Probably let's go try for a different one. And we didn't shoot him. But then the very next day, after the gun season, I just moved a redneck out in the field and cut some corn. And I was like, okay, this will be for the late season. But I just sat there just because that night. And he came out with another buck that, with a drop tine, and turned to be a giant the next year. But then he died of EHD. But so they both came out, and the younger one looked at the blind out there, and he just walked back in. Okay, that's what he's going to do. But he was like 100 yards away where he came out in our clover field. And now he walks out into the corn. He was like at 100 yards. And I was like, man, if he gets to 70, I'll shoot him. And okay, boom, right away, 70. I was like, oh, let's just see if he gets closer. And I was like, okay, he came to 50. And I was like, well, maybe let's wait till, see if he comes, here comes to 30. And then so then I was like, okay, I'm at full draw on him. And then I camera was looking through like the window of a redneck, and kind of from the side, it gets a little bit wavy. I said, well, let's just open that window. So he opened the window, and it just like delaying. And finally he just turned his butt to us. And I was like, I'll just leave him. And really the whole thing was, I just didn't want like to kill him. Like my buddy Tom would be like, telling Tom I shot Wednesday, oh, sure, he's not regular. You think I was garholing him or something. I was like, I can't have told Tom yesterday that he's so irregular. I don't want to go hunt him. But and then the very next day I go out and shoot him. He'd be like thinking, I was like, I'll just shoot him later season. But then he went. That was the only time I ever saw. I mean, we saw him again, but he just did his old stuff again. Like you could never get close to him. You never see him. But then the next year, I was at 8. He put everything on. He had 4s, side by side 3. He always had a sticker off. I said his 2. He'd go from like his 2 to his 3 to his brow. It's like a 12-inch big flyer off his 2. I mean, you put, and you're just like, God. I mean, how many people would have let that deer go to 8 years old? And if it wouldn't have been that at 3 he was a big 10. He had a sticker, big. It was out as 3 at that time. At 3 years old, that sticker, and he had a sticker on his brow. And there was a 9-point for all those years, and I'm just like, I know that he's got it in him to put up the 4 and stickers. So I just kept leaving him. And then, of course, when he was still like at 7, okay, he's not going to do. He's going to be a giant 9-point. We tried to kill him a number of times, and just kind of made it through by default like that, because of that. And lucky we did. But how many of these deer that are, look on my walls here, how many of these could have been 220s? If you left them, you just don't know when they're going to make that big jump.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that is a wrap on part 1 with Lee Lakosky. Part 2 will be coming on the next episode. So see y'all later.